Thank you very much to everyone here on the panel, to the European Commission, to the Youth Card Association, to the co-chair of the Alliance, to the Public Benefit Council, and to Intel for giving a business sector perspective. Before I open the floor to the audience, I would like to ask if you would like to react to each other's statements. This doesn't seem to be the case. So,
right, sorry.
Yeah, yes?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment that maybe Jan sparked off in my brain, and also somebody this morning. I think it's important that we recognise the difference in the language we use when we're talking maybe amongst ourselves, or when we're trying to influence decision makers, funders, and the language we use when we're working with our volunteers and our communities. And that we don't use all this jargon that we use when we're working with our volunteers on the ground. And I think that we must remember that it's a completely different language, but that we don't use the same language here as when working with a volunteer.
Thank you, Anita. So we will now have the time for a discussion with the audience. We have two hands up already. We have two volunteers in the orange T-shirts of the European Year of Volunteering who will give you microphones. May I invite you?
It should be turned on, yes, sorry. Ylva Tveus, European Commission. I was very interested in the last presentation by Revital, and I wanted to ask you, what is your most convincing, the single most convincing argument in favor of employee volunteering that you would use in talking to other businesses?
Maybe we can take 3 questions.
Thank you. I'm John MacDonald, European Commission. I just wanted to come back and set the record straight, if I may, because I heard Anita's quotation of me, where I apparently was very clear in saying something, but in fact, I evidently wasn't as clear as I hoped to be, if that was the message that Anita heard. So just let me clarify that what I was trying to explain yesterday to the Alliance meeting about who is responsible for what in the area of volunteering, I was merely describing the situation that there are many policy areas that affect volunteering and affect volunteers, and that most of those policy areas happen to be member state responsibilities. It doesn't mean that there is no role for the EU level. That was what I wanted to try and convey yesterday. So it's a refinement I just wanted to make about what I said yesterday at the Alliance meeting. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, John. So we take 2 more questions, and then we let the panel. It was here in the. Yes, this.
Michel de Tapol, France Bénévolat. Just a question for Revital. Do the social partners has been involved in the program?
Which partners?
Social partners, trade unions.
The NGOs, you mean?
Yes.
The trade unions.
Yeah.
First, I will answer to start. Or
Okay, let's always take 3 questions because we have 3 now, and then the second 3. So please, you're invited.
Okay, for your question, if I have to convince other companies to take volunteer activities, I think when talking with business, like she said, not talking with the volunteers, you have to be very business practice. So I can show from our experience that in a survey that we do, as for new recruitment to the company, that when they say why they want to work in Intel, one of the things it's they consider the company as a company that care about the community. So this is, and it was also in a survey about Generation Y, the youngest employee, that the society, the community is something that's very important for them. They are less, of course, the salary, the benefit is very important, but they care also about how the company treat the community, and this is very important. When you are inside the company, we have employee health survey, which means that the company health survey, that to check what employees like in our company, what they don't like in our. I always like that to see that volunteerism is one of the hit. Employees like this program. And I want to mention that we send our employee to volunteer during the working hour, because it's not a personal volunteering, it's a volunteering of Intel. We give resources, we give funding, we give our employee, so we let them go through the working hours to volunteer. So it's show we have a business case why it's important internally and externally. So this is what I will answer companies that feel this is not the right thing to do. And as for your question, we are cooperate with non-profit organization, with non-government organization. From my experience in Europe, I don't remember that so far we cooperated. I don't remember, so I don't think it's not that we are not cooperating. I don't have any case or example of cooperating with the trade union. I guess we never get any request as such. About?
Trade unions within your organization.
As well, I never, I can't remember of such from all our thinking of all the countries, I never had such maybe it exists and I'm not, but I never heard. I know all the NGOs, I didn't see such one.
Do the other panelists want to react to these questions? No. Then we had Pavel and then the Austrian NCP.
Thank you. I'm Pavel Trentino, and my civil, actually, profession is coordinator of recognition of non-formal education in an EU-funded project. We've been working on schemes for recognition on portfolios, etc., for volunteers in youth work. And I would have a question to Mrs. van der Sanden, actually, concerning the European Skills Passport. This is another commitment of the European Commission to come up with the proposal next year. There were some consultations before the first version was created. And my question would be, how is it going to be tested in the next years? Because the first version of the European Skills Passport doesn't seem to be that much a passport. It's actually another certificate. And we have plenty of certificates already, but we were hoping for having something much more comprehensive, which would encompass all the experience that people might get through volunteering, but also through other ways of learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. Then there was a question here.
Thank you. My first question is answer to the definition of volunteering. I think for us in Austria, it is clear that family work, family caring, whatever is done by families is not volunteering. One criteria is to doing it out of their own household. This is one criteria of definition. Others is family work. No? But I'm very interested in this council recommendation on validation and non-formal and informal learning. You know, we in Austria developed a confirmation of voluntary work as a follow-up to the International Year of Volunteering in 2001. And then we had a inquiry under enterprises, what would they think about such a confirmation. And one question was if the chances would be higher to get a job if you have also a confirmation on voluntary work, and it was 42% of the entrepreneurs who said yes. So I think this is a very important thing, and I think it's not only important for the youth, because anybody is speaking about demographic challenges, and I think just older persons, if they would balance all their social competences and skills and competencies through volunteering, I think they would have a lot more to to say to that point. Thank you.
There's one more question in the back there.
I'm quite interested in this Inter program because during the European level, European Commission talks about the definition of the voluntary work. Just from the technical side of this Intel input into the local communities, how it works if the employee team work for the, let's say, UN school or similar program, is the time engaged of the team count as the employee's time or just the voluntary basis? I mean, do they have to take a 3 days off, or how do you differ this? I mean, from the Austrian point of view, you can clearly count the volunteers' time input just from the impact on the society.
Thank you. So who wants to start?
And that was the question for you, Madam.
I can relate to the last question about. Let me see that I understand. You ask if how we count the. I said that volunteer in Intel is can be done during the working hours, of course, with coordination with your manager, and of course that it's not getting half part of your job. But if you are committed to certain activity, we give you the time, and of course the working is still waiting for you, and it's your responsibility to do it when you return. So. And the idea and your question was, or this was the answer for you?
The microphone is coming.
Just to be clear, if there's a project running for, say, 2 months, I don't know how is the period. If the project is running for, say, 2 months, is this team from the Intel, do they taking on off during their work and then they volunteer, or they mixed their time?
The team volunteer, the team together, it's usually one day that all your team is going to join an activity that now it's happening in the community. So it's more a one-day activity. It's we don't have an activity that the ones that I'm talking that are more lasting is an individual ones, like private lessons that the employee are giving to kids, that they are supporting a kind of organization. So this is and sometimes it's not have to be they coordinate the time that they have to do it. So the team are one day only.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I will first come back to the first question on the skills passport. I personally, sorry, I'm not working on the skills passport. It's done in my unit, but I do not know all the details of all the projects in my units. I have to apologize for that. But what I can offer you is, please, if you have your, I will take your comments with me, and I will give it directly to my direct colleagues so they can do with it. So I will take contact with you after the meeting so I can get your concerns straight away. And I do not know if you really had a question or just a remark.
What could we expect from the Council recommendation?
Okay, what you can expect from the Council recommendation? Well, the recommendation clearly will be a recommendation, since also validation of non-formal learning is the right of the country itself and what they do with that. But we will recommend, and it's in development, so I cannot tell you the details again, sorry for that. But it will certainly go on to stimulating social partners also to work with it and to accept it and to install instruments that will make it possible. And well, there will be several elements in it, of course. But soon you will get enlightenment, I hope.
Before we take the next questions, I just wanted to ask if the other panelists want to react to the questions. Doesn't seem to be the case, so I saw two more comments. Marta, and yeah, that was.
That was a kind of observation when I listened to Jan Jakub Wygnański. It recalled me the symposium that we organized very recently on recognition of youth work and non-formal learning. And some people actually, I see, recognize me from the previous session, but maybe for the others, sorry, I'm Marta Mędlińska from the partnership between the European Commission and the Council of Europe in the field of youth. So again, young people, but in a way the point would be not only about youth. I had the feeling that the recognition with its different dimensions is a little bit like a chair, that there is the formal recognition, social recognition, political recognition, and self-recognition. And if we manage to strike the right balance between those four dimensions, it should be relatively stable and hopefully sustainable in way of functioning. If either of these four dimensions is somehow neglected, lacking, one of course can sit on a chair that has 3 legs, or there might be even one that is very well balanced, but it is becoming much more difficult. I'm not sure if you see what I mean. Between the recognizing the own benefits as somebody who gets involved, so this approach a little bit, the right one, the hand doesn't know what the left one is doing, but I know that what I do is right. And then there is the formal recognition, so I can show a diploma certificate to other people outside to show I learned this and this thing, and I have now competencies or qualifications of a certain nature. And then the society recognizes the value of this work, the volunteering work, and it is taken up in the political debates to support also this kind of things. I think that then this chair is stable. So what I mean is that in this panel, I think also the different elements were somehow touched, which is very positive. And in my brief reading of the PAVE document, they are also quite well, really impressively presented. And good luck to everybody working on their different bits in cooperating, working together and coordinating afterwards this work. Thank you.
No, what the difficulty is in the youth sector, made a description, for example, on youth workers, no? But you have very different fields of volunteering, and you have to describe the skills and competences that could be acquired through this or that or that or that form of volunteering. And that is what we did last year. We started with three organizations, where it is obviously it's a Red Cross, it's the youth workers. They want to be accepted as with their training program. So, but in reality, we had to do it for each sector of volunteering, and that is my deeper question: how will the communication reflect these aspects?
I don't see any further questions, so.
Shall I then first go in on that element? The recommendation will recommend member states to implement measures to stimulate the validation of non-formal and informal learning. That's what the recommendation will do. But what then is validation of non-formal and informal learning? That is, like I said, identification, documentation, assessment, and then in the end certification of skills and competences acquired anywhere. No matter if it's the Red Cross, no matter if it's at school, at home, as long as you as an individual can show that you are competent, that you really have these learning outcomes, then they can be assessed and therefore certificated. So it's a real instrument for lifelong learning in any place, at any time, for any age.
Yes.
Just a fairly minor point, but I think important. I think we need to be very, very careful that that when we design recognition of volunteering, we don't design something that reinforces inequalities, so that we create recognition, more recognition for people who are already active, who are already involved, and we deepen the inequalities. So I think we just need to bear in mind that volunteering should be an opportunity for all people, all young people, and that the recognition needs to find ways to recognise different contributions in different ways, but the recognition shouldn't be something that deepens inequalities.
I think there are a set of skills that are generic to all aspects of volunteering, and I think that's about the people-human relationship skills. Some people call them soft skills, but there are some generic skills around volunteering, and then there's a whole set of separate ones depending on what your actual outputs are. But there is a common area.
So we still have time for questions, but at the moment there are no questions. But Camilla?
I mean, there was a lot of questions to Revital, but I'm also very much interested. Kamila Czerwińska, sorry. I have also one question, which is a bit follow-up to previous questions to you. I mean, I was really wondering in this, what was the name? It was matching seed grants. When you give some grants to projects, which are done, I understand, in the communities, how do employees establish those projects? Do you have cooperation with NGOs to map needs? On which basis you think that the project could work? Because I think it's also part of your responsibility toward the community in which you operate, Intel in different countries, in different towns, to see if the project really makes an impact, or it's rather an one-day event. So my question to summarize is, how do you identify the community needs in terms of help in those projects?
So our volunteer program divided into two. One is a volunteer activity that we as a company define that are important to us, usually in the area of technology, science, and education. This is our social flag. So we create with local NGOs, with local authority, we understand what are their needs in this area and establish a volunteer activity and ask employees to join those activities. This is one set of activities. On the other hand, we understand that the employee wants as well to express themselves. They are interested in other area than science, technology, and education. Sometimes employees even say that I do all my work time is technology, science. I want something else, not connected to computers, not connected to technology, and they have interest. So the SEED grant, which is a new program, we just launched it in 2009 or 11. It's really new, was to address those employees that coming and say, I want to invest my time in this project. How can you support me? In the past, we said, I'm sorry, we are just have this set. You can try and come and involve in those. And they said, no, I'm interested in other things. So we open this set of program, the SEED grant, because we understand from the survey that the employee wants also to express themselves. And we check the impact. Let's say that in the program that we establish as a company, we have much a set of criteria, and we see how it's impact the local community because it was built together with the NGO, together with the authority. When it's the employee, it's more about their time, their giving. We are not coming and checking. We just want them through the year to report us. Every month they have to report about the progress in their volunteer activity. And we are less looking for the impact. This is more about the employee giving their time. So it's two different set of programs.
Thank you. There are two questions here. One in the second row and one.
Hello, good afternoon to all of the guests here. My name is Elena Lotrian. One question that probably Mrs. van den Sandern would answer best is about also the recognition of volunteer time contribution at European level by the European Commission through its programs, its financement programs towards the organizations. It is important, and based on the example by Intel, where they recognized the time spent by their employees within volunteer work, so they match it with money. How can this be done at European level that we recognize within the financement programs towards the organization the value of volunteer time? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacques Spelkens. I'm also representing a big multinational corporation called GDF Suez, which is active in energy. So it's not really a question, but simply to go in the direction of what Ms. Bitan said about Intel. There was a question before, earlier this afternoon, to know why big companies are really going into employee volunteering policies. And according to us, it's a question of respecting the wishes of the employees themselves to be recognized as an individual. We spoke about different types of recognition, but self-recognition is, I think, the most important thing, according to us. I'm going to give you one simple example. That is that last year we had to recruit something like 100 engineers in France and in Belgium, young engineers, and so we decided to make a small experiment. That is that we published two sorts of recruitment ads. One typical traditional recruitment ad saying what kind of certification you needed, what kind of work you would be doing, what kind of car you would receive, etc., etc., etc. And another ad for exactly the same kind of job, and we simply added one sentence to it. That is that the company gave you the possibility to go for 3 weeks of your time during the 2 first years of your job to work on a humanitarian project with associations or NGOs that we are partners of or with. And so, being a very traditional company, GDF Suez is something like a very conventional energy company. So we expected 80% going for the first ad and choosing for the car only and the salary, and 20% for the other one. And we were very surprised in human resources to notice that 75% of the youngsters answered to the second ad and not to the first one. So for a company, this is very important, which means that our own human resources policy had to be revised, and that we have to include some elements that are not only linked to salary or competencies or skills or talents or whatever, but also to the individual, right? So when we hire people nowadays, young people, we do not only look at the competencies they have, but what they want to do with their life and what kind of sense they want to give to their work. That is, that they come and work for 35 hours in France or more in other countries, but they are also individuals with another aspect in them, with other types of skills. If in their free time they are active in scouting, or if they are teaching in sort of schools for people in underdeveloped countries or whatever, well, companies should also not reward them, but recognize that they have other talents. And that is exactly what our human resources policy is trying to do for the moment. That is, include other types of skills than the normal skills that the reason why the people are recruited. 20 years ago, when you recruited an accountant, you just asked him if he had a certificate in accountancy. Well, nowadays you ask him, what other skills do you have? Can you play the piano? Can you teach? Can you play tennis very well? This can also be a skill that can be used in training or coaching or coaching other people. So self-recognition is, I think, very, very important. And sorry, I'm going to be very brief, but the other question that was asked is what kind of projects were taken up by the companies in volunteering? Well, in our different affiliates throughout Europe, what we do is we organize a sort of competition for the best project. That is, the employees themselves or managers themselves have to find an NGO in their environment or in their area and construct a project together with an NGO and bring it to the management. We have also a certain number of criteria so that they can develop the project together with the NGO, with the expertise inside of the company. And the third thing I would like to say is that we also develop a sort of, in French you call it mécénat de compétences. It's a sort of competence sponsorship. That is that instead of devoting 1 hour a week or 1 day per month to a certain project, well, some of the people, some of the managers or even juniors of the company are taken out of their job for 2 months or 3 months, and they are sort of lent to an association or an NGO that needs, for a certain moment, I don't know, an expert in accountability or an expert in building bridges and whatever, and that they cannot afford them for that moment. Okay, this was just my testimony.
Thank you very much for sharing this additional information. If anyone has questions, I would like to ask you to raise your hands now because it's the last round. We're coming to an end of the session. There's one more question back there.
Magdalena Macinska, I would like to ask a question. I think this will be to Anita because you spoke about this recommendation for organizations as learning organizations. And I was wondering, because I know that many youth organizations or organizations that are working with a specific group, for example, people experiencing exclusion, they engage them in different voluntary activities, and these young people are gaining a lot of skills and competences. So I'm sure, so this organization would be keen to have some kind of, to enter into some kind of, to validate and to assess the skills, but in your working group, have there been any specific ideas how to implement this principle? And the second question would be to Bob. Could you say maybe a few more words about these plans to link the youth card with the youth on mobility? And how is this going and in which direction? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there were to different panelists some questions. Who wants to start?
I think the question about the money is still open. Yes. So there was a question, if I understood it well, you would like to know if there is on Commission level insight in the value of volunteer time contribution. Well, I won't have the answer to that. Perhaps one of my colleagues in the audience, I don't know. I don't see any responses, so I'm sorry, I cannot respond to that. It's an interesting question though, but I don't know.
Sorry. We did discuss, sorry, a bit far away, recognition and validation of people's skills and competencies. As I said, we didn't go into great detail because we discovered there were so many around. As on a personal level, I've worked in the environmental sector, developing programs to recognize volunteers' skills and competencies. And one of the challenges is if you want to turn that into a proper qualification that's accredited, it becomes quite complex in terms of paperwork. And we felt as a working group, not all small organizations are capable of doing that. And it was very heavy and they couldn't do that. But then we did look at some tools that were quite simple about how you, as an organization, can help them recognize their skills and competencies and how they can recognize them themselves. There are a few European tools, like Youth Pass, which has some competencies, and I think those are being developed further. But I think there's quite a lot of tools, and if you read we've produced some guidelines on how to recognise the good tools rather than recommending lots of specific tools. But I can talk to you about it afterwards if you want.
I just want to specify one detail. I was wondering about this possibility of this partnership that, for example, an organization that works with specific groups and has this experience of helping them to gain specific qualifications maybe could become some kind of validating partner with working together with some official institution. If any of you panelists would have a thought on that, I would be also interested.
The original experience that I had with my organisation in the UK is that we develop a lot of learning and training in environmental volunteering, but we didn't have the skills to assess competencies, etc. So we worked with a local vocational college, and they did that aspect of the work, but they also then helped us and trained us to become people who could assess and help people recognise their own learning. So yes, we worked in partnership with the vocational sector, if you like, rather than very academic. And that was a very useful way of working.
And just to respond to your question on Youth on the Move and the connection between European Youth Card Association and Youth on the Move, Karen mentioned Youth on the Move in her presentation. It's one of the flagship initiatives from the European Commission, and it's going to be the key initiative to promote youth mobility. So it needs to build on qualifications frameworks and the ability for young people to transfer qualifications. Our role, I think, is to say to the Commission, and here's a ready-made tool that helps you do that. So we are formally part of the technical working group, which was just established 3 weeks ago, and we have a meeting next week in Brussels. So it's at the very early stages, although the Youth on the Move card, which was promoted initially as one of the key dimensions of Youth on the Move, I think the Commission are now saying we shouldn't really produce a card. There are cards around, and we want to work in partnership with people like European Youth Card Association and others like ISIC and others to make sure that the card is a useful tool, a useful component. But Youth on the Move, as I understand, is currently going through a formal impact assessment phase right now, and will be in that impact assessment phase for half of 2012, as I understand it. So it's very early stages, but we're part of the technical working group that's really thinking about how does the Commission turn this idea for a flagship initiative, which is about promoting youth mobility, into something that's implementable. I don't know if Karen wants to add more to that.
Then we are already over the time. I would like to thank the panel for sharing their expertise. I would like to thank you for your questions. And just to shortly wrap up, I would like to go back to the metaphor that Marta was using, that recognition can be formal, political, social, and self-recognition. And I would like to call upon everyone here in this room to use the opportunity that we are actually together here in one spot to exchange ideas and to come out of this meeting with concrete ideas how to follow up on basically the section number 5, recognition tools, which is here presented in the PAVE. You can find it on page 31, with proposals from different civil society organizations from all over Europe, and that we come with concrete proposals how to work on the recognition of volunteering out of this meeting. So thank you very much again for your contribution to this discussion, and we have a coffee break now. And from what I see, we start again at, is it correct? Yeah, in half an hour at 4:15. Thank you.